and we're in here with like brony butt plugs and harnesses. Like, let's fucking go, you know?
Yes.
It's dirty down here. We're in the Westworld dungeon getting sick.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me is my co-host, Ash.
Hi, y'all.
And this is our Instacast edition where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our immediate reactions to the episode. This week it was season 4, episode 7. The episode is titled Metanoia. And we were asked by one of our listeners during the last Telegraph, Sober British Stew, to find the beauty in each episode. So we're going to do that tonight. We're going to start out and honor that wish by finding the beauty in this episode. And after Stu asked us to find the beauty in the show, I prepared myself to closely analyze every segment of this episode. I looked at each performance for some shred of quality that I could put in my pocket as insurance in case the episode was a stinker. Instead, episode 7, Westworld treated me to my favorite episode of the season, and perhaps my favorite episode since season 2. We had heartfelt goodbyes. We had an incredible scene with 2 Williamses and Jeffrey Wright in yet another tear-jerking death. Ash, I saw beauty all around in this one.
Yeah, I think that this was your typical Westworld television show. Like, it's what we've been wanting, right? And I think that a lot of it is the attention, the beauty, right? Is the attention they paid to these original characters. There's a reason why we love this episode, and it's because of Dolores and Teddy being together again. It's this pair up of Maeve and Bernard and Stubbs actually having something to do, right? Like, that was really nice to see again. And seeing these series originals, even, I want to say another duo, host Man in Black and real Man in Black. It's all these duos that we've gotten to know and that we've gotten to love that made this series something different, that made it something worth watching. And having them all together in one episode was beautiful. And then, of course, the ending. Like, Westworld used to kill me on the endings where I'm like, fuck, like, because we had to wait another week. And I'm there with you. It's been since season 2 that I've been like, shit, when it's over. And this was that moment. So I think that Lisa Joy and all the other showrunners remembered what we loved. And this is the kind of fan service that works because it's fan service with a purpose. And that was really nice to see.
The disclaimer we always give on the Instacast is this is our opinions of the episode just after watching it. If you want factual analysis, objective looks at the topics presented on the episode, that's our deep dive that comes out on Tuesday. And then, of course, the listener mail is on Friday with the Telegraph. But this is just our immediate reaction. So now, Ash, gloves are off. The full spectrum of your opinion. What was your reaction to this episode?
Clearly, this is what a lot of us that have been frustrated with this season, that this is what we've been waiting for. And I know that we're going to get criticism because God knows we do. You know, you guys should have been patient. This is what they were building up to. And they'll use this episode, which I think we'll all agree was amazing, to say that, like, Gene, you and I have been wrong in our annoyance with the season, but I disagree. I think that this episode shows what Westworld is still really capable of and could give us every single episode. And I'm not talking about the action. I'm not talking about the deaths. I'm not talking about any of that. I mean, that stuff is cool and it's badass, but that's not why I watch Westworld. The intrigue and the ruminations on life and on sacrifice and all of that, it all happened in this episode. And I have to say, the perfect example of that is the way they ended this episode. So you have Bernard, a character we have all in the Westworld fandom come to just worship and love. I think we all agree that Jeffrey Wright is the MVP since Anthony Hopkins has left. And you see him open that door and you know that his son has run through it, and you you have that moment where you have so much hope built up that like he's gonna find an ending, he's gonna find a sublime, he's gonna find an afterlife or peace or whatever you want to call it, a gift for all he's done. And then the screen kind of goes all hazy, like it's glitching, and then it goes off, and it's this punch in the gut because they like show you something and you think, and then it's like, but then they make you second guess. And that's what Westworld does so beautifully, is that it gives us these moments that makes us think and makes us cry and makes us hurt and makes us remember what it's like to be human. And we haven't had those moments really since season 2, in my opinion. And I think that because of that, this season for me is going to feel like a lot of filler for a really badass ending. Because if next week is like this week, it's going to be a great fucking ending to the season. And maybe they just should have killed Hale sooner, because Hale and Caleb, I don't know if they really serve the purpose that they wanted them to serve on the show, because they're just not, in my opinion, as dynamic as these other characters. And I think this episode proved it.
That point that you talked about with Bernard gets back to something you talked about after the last episode, which is the difference in deaths between what a human death is and what a host death is, right? That he had the opportunity to just go into the sublime and stay there. He had the opportunity to kind of live in eternity and bliss, but he gave that up, which is like asking a human to die and also to know there is a heaven and say, I'm not going there, right? That's the kind of sacrifice we're talking about. And I agree with you, Ash. My best guess is the showrunners figured opening up with an episode like this would be way too much for a casual audience. They had to ease people into it. It's like the main Westworld audience is out there ordering blindfolds from Adam and Eve, and we're in here with like brony butt plugs and harnesses. Like, let's fucking go, you know?
Yes.
It's dirty down here. We're in the Westworld dungeon getting sick. But this episode really was tremendous. It gave us the stuff about Westworld we love. Mm-hmm. It played with reality. It gave us oodles of answers. It hit heavy with the symbolism. I mean, the entire Christina bathtub scene could be analyzed for hours. It treated us to things we love about Westworld. And then, of course, as you said, Ash, perfect ending, cliffhanger, David Bowie drop. What more do you want from TV?
Well, and can we just talk for a second about Tandy Way Newton in this fucking episode?
Yes.
Like, Maeve was Maeve. She was so good in this episode. And when Bernard says to her, do you still want to fight? And she doesn't say a word. She just gives him that look. Like, that is such a Westworld thing. And just like you were talking about the mind fuck, the beginning, the reveal that it was a simulation. And then I was sitting there groaning like, oh my God, this whole thing's been a simulation, because I thought that's where we were going.
Yep.
And then it was like a double reveal and then like a triple reveal. And that's what I love. And I know people wanted a more straightforward season, but I think that this just shows that when they're not so straightforward, when they're not so on the nose, these show writers and these actors and the combination of that with the set teams and the special effects teams, like, they're fucking brilliant. There's nobody better than them on television right now. And it was awesome. It was just awesome to be back in that world again.
There was this awful fight scene between Tandy Way Newton and Tessa Thompson out in the water, but she comes up out of the water. Her makeup is all gone, which is Maeve. The mask that she wears is gone. And she says,
her hair's messed up.
Not here to win, here to survive. And I was like, fuck, like, those are the moments that we live for. And we used to get those on a per episode basis. So now even a buffet of that in this episode was really worth waiting for.
I mean, it was Goosey's, right? I haven't gotten Goosey's from Westworld since season 2. And I thought this was as powerful as her scene in season 2 when the Sublime has opened. And she's fighting them so that her daughter can make it and the others can make it. Like, the sacrifice from Maeve and Bernard, and the Bernard death. I mean, nobody dies better than Jeffrey Wright. It sounds terrible, but like, nobody does it better than him. He's so incredible. And I hope, and I'm going against myself here, I hope they resurrect him, because like, I need him back. Like, he's so good. I can't imagine this show without him, but I also would respect the balls of a show that get rid of him like they did with Ford. I think it would allow it to evolve. And one thing we haven't even talked about, Gene, is the reveal with Dolores at the end. Like, that's another mic drop. That's another like, oh shit. So what a great weekend for TV, because we had this. Everybody go watch The Sandman. It's fucking awesome. I was so scared to watch it because I'm so close to the source material and it's so good. So you got The Sandman on Netflix. You got Westworld in real true form on HBO. It's just a good, solid weekend for television.
So, Ash, let's look forward to the deep dive. The deep dive is our objective look after 24 hours to digest the episode, where we really get into the topics that we want to focus on for the episode. And we use the Instacast to kind of preview those episodes. So we'll start with you. What do you want to talk about on the deep dive?
I think first and foremost, it's the conversation that Bernard is having with someone. He's making that recording for someone. And who is that recording for? Which I think a lot of us can make a supposition for who it is for. But who is that recording for and what is the purpose of it? Because Maeve does drop this line of, the next world could be better. Bernard, they showed us multiple times him to, Akecheta saying, there's a path towards something. Not that we can be saved, but there's a path, there's an opportunity. So I want to look at that. And I also think I would really like to examine the consequences and the purpose of opening the sublime, because I feel like that's like leaving like not just like your front door open, but like all your windows and doors open in your house with like a big sign, like I got TVs in here, like it's really obvious. And so I want to look at why that was a necessary piece and what that is leading toward.
Interestingly enough, my focus is on the Hoover Dam as well, but for a different reason. We saw that simulation raid with Bernard and Maeve, and then we saw the letterbox view kind of expand out. We're back in reality, and we watched them run through it again. There were some differences in the way that they behaved. Of course, it's a simulation Maeve versus quote unquote real world Maeve. But I want to look into those differences and what they might tell us. Bernard has a very somber walk through this episode. And I can imagine if you have to go through these things multiple times, die multiple times, it is not a jolly excursion, right? But I do want to look into what those differences are and what they might tell us about where this is all going. I also want to dissect William's conversation with himself, because there was a lot of depth to that conversation to catch it all in one go round and really look through that again. And maybe it'll give us some insights into how the hosts work, what the host Man in Black is really made of, how this interplay is, and whether the original William would be pleased with this outcome or not. Dying isn't always a bad thing, especially if you're the type of neurodivergent William is. So we can get into that as well. And of course, there'll be other topics to examine. So if you guys are out there listening and you want us to look into something, or if there's a topic you think is great for consideration, or if you got some ideas about what we had to say on this Instacast, please write us at hosts@shatontv.com, or you can go to shatpod.com/TV and use the speak pipe feature to let us know what you're thinking with a voicemail. And that concludes this week's Instacast. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at ShatOnTV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatpod.com/TV. You can email us, hosts@shatontv.com. Wherever where fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us Tuesday for the Westworld Deep Dive.